Welcome to the Future of Payroll and Workforce Management Insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Future of Payroll and Workforce Management, a podcast here at HR.com where I am your host. My name is Brent Skinner, and I'd like to welcome my two guests today, the co-authors of the book Designed for Volatility. We have David Blumenthal and Yair Griver. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for agreeing to do this episode. I'm really looking forward to discussing the book today, and we have a lot to talk about. I want to make this relevant to your book, and I also would like to make it sort of relevant to payroll and workforce management, or the role of maybe the HR, maybe the HR leader, this sort of thing, or the payroll leader, which is fine. We could even get into finance. What are the human qualities that will enable us to sort of, to retain our sovereignty? That might be kind of a scary way to put it, but and steward or lead as we sort of abdicate or maybe delegate various tasks to AI that have long been. It's a long way of saying this, but have long been sort of associated with what humans do.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe I'll start. But I think what might be appropriate is to give you a little bit of an introduction into why we wrote this book. And that will help to contextualize, if you will, where HR's role falls in all of this. And I think that might be a good starting point for it. When we wrote Designed for Volatility, it really came from a basic premise. And the basic premise was this. We have, as organizations, treated all of these changes as events, unique, separate, spread out over time, as opposed to something that builds and stacks on one another. And what we have learned in the course of the last 5 to 10 years, maybe a little bit longer, is that those events are happening faster and faster and faster. So when you start to have events, cloud computing, the internet, cloud computing, smartphones, all of those things that start to come into play, well, AI is just a natural outgrowth. And these things are coming one after the other after the other. And we thought about it when we were writing Designed for Volatility, and we said business needs to reflect on this differently, because if they think for a moment that this is going to slow down, it's actually going to accelerate. So the next version may be quantum computing, the next version will be robotics, the next version will be biotech, but there is something which will lead to lengthier lives, which is going to shift the way organizations have to look at both their landscape and their employee base. So we see this as a fundamental shift. Now, to get through this shift, mind you, what is necessary is that organizations have to look at the way they establish their organizations in terms of meeting competitive challenges. But more than that, they have to shift the way they are helping their employees accept and make the best of these changes. And we're bullish on it. We think there's great opportunity here, but that's the starting point for this discussion. Yair, add in, please.
Yeah. So when David says we're bullish, he's actually in some ways underplaying it. So, when you look at, I remember when ATMs came out and everyone said that's going to be the death of the bank teller, for instance. In the meantime, today we have tens of thousands of more bank tellers than we did when ATMs came out. Why is that? Because they reduced the cost of a bank branch. You didn't have to have as many tellers because you didn't need to have people just saying, how much cash would you like? Here you go. You want it in 20s or 10s? And as a result, you can open a branch with 3 or 4 people. And so now there are many more local branches than there used to be. Okay. Anytime you've got a disruptive technology or even a disruptive event, because we're not only talking about technologies, we might be talking about tariffs. We might be talking about, other things that happen. Um, what you find is that, yes, some positions might go away. You don't have a lot of manual transcribers anymore, but those people end up doing something that is more worthwhile and more interesting to them. And that really points to where I think HR is going, in that you're going to have companies that need to be built around not so much the top down capabilities like so many companies are today, but where the C-level folks, the upper management, go ahead and make sure that the strategy is understood by everyone. They set guardrails around things, and they move a lot more of the decision making down to those who are working directly with the customers. As a result, HR is going to have to focus on building strategic understanding and capacity among the employees. You need to, when you talk about payroll, etc., you're going to need to change your reward systems to reward teams, to reward failure that teaches, not
Mm.
penalize it. Okay. And what we tried to do in our book is not only explain why these changes are happening, but also provide a framework for a step-by-step way of reimagining your company, your how you reward people, how you teach people, how you inculcate strategy throughout the company, and how you use your tools, including AI, to bring weak signals from your customer base and from the world at large up so that you can rapidly experiment using these new technologies and bring them into your company faster than before.
We've
Yeah.
kind of referred to it, if I may, as the democratization of corporate America. So, heretofore, in a hierarchical structure, the leadership determines what are the appropriate actions for the rest of the organization to do. The role of the people on the front line is more execution oriented than it is analysis, judgment, and things like that. And that's going to be a fundamental shift. Now, what that will mean for HR is frankly a lot of different things. Yes, the things that are transactional, the review of resumes, scheduling, basic administrative functions, yes, that is going to disappear. And it's going to disappear relatively rapidly. But workforce strategy is going to increase. The need to do skills and reskilling of staff will increase. Change management and communication will become paramount because whenever you step into a world of uncertainty, what happens after that is people become nervous. And so HR will play a fundamental role in that. Yair mentioned incentive and performance. We see that as shifting also dramatically because now you're going to be rewarding not only for the initial success, but also for the downstream influence that it causes on other activities. So there will have to be a way of measuring those types of elements as well. Of course, we used AI as a metaphor because it's just the thing that's in front of people right now, but there will need to be responsible AI use governance, bias mitigation, guardrails, all of those sorts of things. HR is front and center in all of these activities, and it's going to shift the way that the business has to treat HR as well. So let's pause. I'm sure we've given you much to think about and a lot of questions to follow.
Yeah, this is fascinating stuff, and I do have a few questions. So first of all, one of them is, I recall reading an article recently, and I wish I could remember where it was. I'll find it somehow. But it talked about how executives are really struggling to figure out how to own AI. Like that and and I thought that was interesting when I read that, because even the person writing this article seemed to operate from the unspoken, or even the assumed postulate that the executive suite should be in charge of AI, right? And I hear you say the democratization of business, right? And to me, AI is just one of these things that's is dispersed. Every single employee, depending on the type of work it is, right? Conceivably, certainly desk workers, right? Um, every single one of them can be using this AI. I've had conversations at events recently, participated in sessions where we talked about AI governance. Let's bring this into the HR realm, right? You have your human resource information system, your HRIS, right? And you have all the information that these they're good systems, right? They've been designed well. Some of them are better than others, but a lot of them, they work well. And you have all of this data that's sort of predetermined, that yes, this is the kind of data that goes into the HRIS, right? And it's assumed, rationally, that this data will be in certain places. So we'll know where to find this data, and we know the kind of data it's going to be, and it should live in this HRIS. We know this. This is like a known, right? But with all this AI usage, you end up with a lot of other data that's like uh, it, extra national, whatever. Like it's whatever the word is. It's outside of the known official system. It's out there. A, it should be in the HRIS. B, it's not the kind of data we normally would have thought of that should be in the HRIS. But now that we see it, well, sure, yeah, that ought to be in the HRIS. So how do you create governance systems with that, with an inherently sort of this might be too strong of a word, but sort of an anarchic almost technology here, where every single individual has agency to do what they want to make themselves more efficient or better, or however they want to be and work.
So
What do you guys think of that?
so we actually talk about this in the book under the concept of a barbell company, which is taken from the book Anti-Fragile by Nissim Taleb. So if you think of a barbell, you've got a straight line and then the two weights at the end. Okay, the left side is all of the things that need to have governance. Okay, your audit capabilities, your data access, which is what you're talking about here, etc. And on the right side is all of the rapid experimentation that goes into deciding how you're going to do different things. So there are a couple of things that I want to challenge. The first one is, yes, you can put everything in an HRIS, just like you can put everything into a CRM if you're doing, you know, management of customers. Let me give you an example that I hooked up myself for us. Okay, CRMs, typically one of the most painful things about them is you end up hooking them up to your email system so that you can automatically pull in any email that comes from a customer. Now that includes, you may become friendly with a customer and they invite you to a wedding or a 4th of July party or something. And now all of those emails are in the CRM. You don't need them there. What I've done is I've connected our CRM data and my email data to my AI and basically said, you know what? Go ahead and give me a daily report that says, here are the things I have to do today, by taking data from both of them so that it sees I'm in the middle of an email thread that's unanswered, right? CRM is actually pretty bad at that because it can't figure out if it's a personal thing or not. Well, AI is brilliant at that. So now I get a list that says, for business, do these. Oh, here's some family things as well that you might need to deal with. So I get every morning a list of the top most important things. I can knock them off by 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and then I can go ahead to anything else that's involved. I think HRIS is, and let me take that back. I think that enterprise data in general is going to end up looking a lot more like data warehouses and data islands, data lakes, what they tried to create by pulling in data from everywhere. You're going to end up doing a lot more of that. But the beauty of AI and AI connections is that you can do it by connecting live to the systems instead of always, spending a year trying to move the data over and create all of these different um, access mechanisms to them, right? Here are the quarterly figures, here are the annual figures, etc. So I do think that it's actually going to make the strategic uses of the data in HRIS is better because it will be able to connect to more things. One thing I've always seen in HRIS is that's a problem. You want to track all of the skills that your employees have. But how do you keep that up to date when they're working on a new project every 6 months? That becomes really difficult to do. Well, you know what? Suddenly you have access to the corporate SharePoint as well that has all of the project reports that everyone's been doing or whatever system you use. So suddenly it's able to take the HRIS data, which has some of the backward looking data, let's call it, on an employee, because you've got a lot of data of what they did before you hired them. And maybe it's trailing 6 months, but you've also got the data up to last Friday, the latest status report. And now that becomes really valuable.
I'm going to take Yair spoke from the technology point of view. I'm going to spend a few moments speaking from the cultural point of view because, and we've worked together for many, many years, Yair and I. So it's about 40. So we kind of know each other. We know our orientations to business problems. And I always feel culture is paramount in any sort of organization. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time answering your question in that vein, in that spirit. So what's going to shift also is that the nature of teams will no longer be as related to a particular function. They will be cross-functional in an organization. And by being cross-functional in an organization, the knowledge about who has what skills becomes particularly more evident and more important because I'm going to need people on compliance. I'm going to need people who know about the customer. I'm going to need and their needs as stakeholders. I'm going to have a group of stakeholders who will be working together. That's a shift because many hierarchical organizations treat this as a technology problem or a management problem. Well, guess what? They are all going to be grouped together. And the way to be successful is to manage all that information in one place. Now, from a cultural perspective, this is going to be a shift for leadership as well, and not just for the employees. What you're going to value at an employee level is their ability to make judgments, read signals, communicate effectively, tell stories appropriately, coordinate. That is going to be fundamental to success in an organization. From a leadership perspective, they're also going to have to learn to trust their frontline employees to deliver the signals back to them because the current flow, Brent, in terms of all of this is typically you get a signal at the customer facing level. It has to travel north through multiple levels of the organization to get to the person who determines strategy. Well, that may not be possible anymore because one of the dynamics that shifts in strategy is that your competition is also using AI. And if they're using it more effectively, they're making changes to their mode of operations, to their go-to-market strategies, to their solutions faster than you are. So the ability to move information north and south within an organization becomes much more important. Leaders are going to have to learn to move away from being a controller of the throughput to being the builder of team capability, within the organization. They're going to have to model this behavior. They're going to have to be more cognizant of good news and bad news, so that they can make adjustments in their strategy. We even envision that the 3 to 5 year model that people talk to, in when developing a strategy, is not going to be the one that they're going to operate with. They are going to maybe build a model like that, but they're going to have to revisit it every 6 months, look at the experimentation that is going on within their organization, look at the marketplace that's shifting, and be able to make adjustments to it. They also going to have to create psychological safety. And that means people have to be comfortable delivering news that you may not want to hear, because that will trigger certain activities and events that you want to do. Strategy will become living, a decision-making process, and more people will be involved in it. If I could ask Yair to speak to a little bit about experimentation, I think
I
that's
was
an
just
appropriate
about to
thing.
pick that up. Yes.
Can I insert
Sure,
some?
please.
Can I just insert something here though that
Sure.
because I just want to make, and I'm looking forward to that. So a couple of thoughts came to mind, right? Thinking about leadership spatially, right? If you, which isn't really how an organization works, but if you sort of think of an image of an organization, it's you talk about that hierarchical thing, and right, you can't really practice strategy effectively in a hierarchical framework anymore, is what I'm hearing. Surely, we certainly soon will not be able to, right? And so I thought about, strategic thinking should be, well, you said the dispersion of leadership across the organization, as opposed to think of an organization like concentric circles. You get to the center one, and that's where the leadership is, right? And you have the people, the frontline people, who are getting the signals first, right? And yeah, maybe some leadership. Maybe we need to completely rethink what it means to be a leader now, which is I don't want to be too. That almost seems like too much to say, right? But a part of me thinks that. So where am I going with that? I mean, it just feels like a complete upending of the organization. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to say too, is that you said cross-functional teams, right? Cross-organizational teams, right?
Yeah. Well,
'Cause we've
for
seen
us,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
for us,
go ahead.
cross-functional is often cross-organizational, right? Because of the way organizations today are very much functionally oriented, right? When I worked at Microsoft, product development was in Redmond, product support was in a different city, consulting and sales were in different cities, right? And that's how the organization was set up. But I think, you know, that that limited a lot of the signals coming in from the customers via the salespeople, right? Or via the support people. When I went to Microsoft, part of my um, the very first thing I was assigned to do was to help uh, bring the company closer to its customers after the federal lawsuits in the late 90s, 2000s. And the first thing I did was I brought the top people from our support team out of the offices they were at and found them offices with my team and set up so I ended up setting up a community room so that every week 20 different people from across our teams in Visual Studio would work together for 1 hour. We brought in lunch for everyone and go online and answer people's questions online. And those hours began with our support people saying, these are the top support questions coming in. Okay. So our people began to understand what really mattered to our customers and what didn't. And we were able to find the 15 to 20% of our people who thrived in that environment. And this applies perfectly to this. And off on their own would set up their own machines so that they could interact with our customers as well. And they ended up being the ones that, if you look today, are now senior VPs at Microsoft, etc., because they are the ones who developed the customer empathy. So I think you'll see that today. We won't be sending strategic decisions to the creation of strategy to the front lines, but we will allow the decision making to disperse throughout the company. Today, when there's a major decision, it has to go through 5, 6 layers of people to be decided, takes 2 months with, 15 meetings that have to go through different hierarchies, and you have to change the PowerPoints and all of that stuff. That is way too long. So if you get a group, if all of your people are trained on the strategy, what we do and what we do not do, they can make a lot of the decisions quicker. And when you look at the barbell and experimentation, that ties into this. So the right side of the barbell is where you make bets. So and it applies to how you fund things, etc. So let's take when AI first started coming out, when the large language models first started becoming big, right? You had different departments. Let's pick legal as one of them, and uh, just the software developers, or finance for another. And what often happened is that companies would say, "Oh, I have a license for Microsoft 365, and I worked on MS 365. I love the product, but as a result, let me pay an extra $12 or $15 a month per employee, and now they all have Copilot. Everybody has AI, and we are now an AI first company." Well, no, it doesn't work that way, right? Besides the training, etc., it turns out that different LLMs and different AI approaches work better for different groups. So there are some that work well. There are, if you look online, for instance, there's a dashboard that rates each LLM as it comes out with how well it handles legal issues, or how well it handles finance and integration with Excel, or whatever. You name the area, it's got it, medical. So what we should have done is said, okay, everybody who has an experiment to run, come and give us the experiment and give us the metrics you're going to track before you even begin. And tell me what is considered a success and what is considered not a success and what is considered far exceeds. And then I will give you $50,000 or $75,000 and 4 weeks or 5 weeks to do this experiment. And if it ends up successful, I will give you a budget for another 3 months. If it's wildly successful, I'll give you a budget for 6 months. And again, give me the metrics and exactly what you're going to do. And when one of these succeeds, now give me the story of how you'll inculcate this success across the correct areas of the company. And so you end up with a company that may internally have 5 or 6 different LLMs for different types of projects. One does marketing very well, one does finance really well, etc. But you're doing it based on actual metrics that are decided ahead of time. You're not trapped in this, "Oh, we're so close, give me another $100,000 and we'll get there" type of world we're too typically in now. The the other thing is, it gives you a chance to celebrate failure. Well, we tried this, but you know what? We didn't hit our metrics. But here's what we learned. And the here's what we learned becomes a success of that try because it was relatively inexpensive to do it. And now these people have learned how to work together on a team. They've gone back to their own teams and they continue to spread that approach, and that trust of the executives because, hey, I went ahead and they let me go off for 5 weeks and try something and I failed. And you know what? They said, good on you, mate. Wow, that's a really different message.
Yeah.
Brent, if I may, let me just qualify a few things that Yair had said that I think might add to the conversation. With experimentation, we're not betting on a single scenario. The beauty of the modular approach to this type of experimentation is you can bet on multiple scenarios simultaneously because we don't know which one necessarily is going to come to pass. Now, one of the things I did with a colleague this past week is I asked him in terms of one of his experiments whether he would write a press release. I think Amazon did this in the past when they would come out with experimentation. And he worked with his AI tool of choice, and he wrote a beautiful press release that highlighted the value of what it was that he was trying to accomplish. Now, that was incredibly valuable and cool because he could live into a future that did not exist yet. And he also could make a presentation built around success and what the company could expect to achieve more readily and more easily. So that was a great way to position his project relative to the future. In terms of the idea of more employees on the front lines being able to make decisions, the idea behind that is not to create the wild, wild west of decision making. All of this has to come with guardrails as provided based on the executive leaders and the strategy that they have put forward so that members of the organization understand where they have latitude and what needs to be escalated for further review. So again, there are controls that needed to be put in place. Now, what we've tried to do with Design for Volatility is to build a framework and an operating model because AI is just today's version. There'll be another one. And as Yair pointed out, there will be continuous learning going on throughout the organization. So that learning has to make the organization stronger. And that's the fundamental principle behind everything we're trying to accomplish.
There needs to be a way to capture it and absorb it. And one of the things that's been running through my head while you folks have been talking is this idea that we're not managing this change, we're absorbing the change now. It's more of an absorption, right? And in and it has to be that because of the speed, right? Up till maybe couple minutes ago, we were able to sort of, manage it or think of it through that lens of managing it. And not that this is not an approach to managing, right? But it's a more of a mind shift or attitude shift of are we kind of meeting it or are we kind of just letting it come in?
You're spot on. And we have talked in the past of resilience as opposed to anti-fragility. So when an event occurred, did we make our numbers? Did we recover from an event that happened, a breach or something like that? The idea was how fast could we recover? How fast could we respond to it? The world is shifting, and because the world is shifting, it's no longer about how fast we can recover, but how we can take the lessons that we are getting from all of these events and make us stronger so that we are not only recovering, but strengthening the business every step of the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you're just looking for resilience, and too many companies are doing this today with AI. They sit there and they try to automate the old version of how they did work. And then, a Forbes article comes out about how they failed, right? Other companies have gone to first principles and said, how do we design this assuming this is just part of the air we breathe? And they put together a team to do that. And they see, 10x improvement. And the other interesting thing when you were talking before about HRIS, redoing it also points out the places where the old way would fail, except you've had someone in the same job for 20 years who's able to catch those issues and fix them. Well, now you can
Yeah.
begin to, put those fixes out there. The other interesting thing that we're seeing a lot in AI now, especially as you're in the development world, software development world, is as you're taking on bigger and bigger projects, they are having the AIs create a file where they put in everything they've learned or everything they've had an issue with so that other AIs can learn from them as they're developing so that the system strengthens itself automatically. And what happens is written down, and there are rules about when they need to alert a person, either via Slack or email or whatever, to take a look and help them figure it out. That's just an amazing self-correcting thing. Now picture that type of capability hitting an HR department where it just gets smarter and smarter based on real world. Oh, here's a case. We've never actually had, we're a young company and we have the first case where somebody says, I don't want to get health care because I'm a veteran and I already have health care. What do we do? Well, now that allows you to say, okay, here's going to be our standard that goes into the system. And now you never worry about it again.
It's super exciting time, to be honest, right?
Yep.
Because what you just described is a major departure from the way a lot of HR departments operate today, from a cultural standpoint, and also from the limitations of their technological ecosystems and all this sort of stuff. And and we could talk about this for hours. This is a podcast, and so we've reached the end of the podcast. David, Yair, I know you as Yag. I've
Yep.
known you as Yag for the longest time. Thank you both so much for joining the podcast today to discuss your book.
It was
Oh,
our
thank
pleasure. If I can do one quick advertisement, we love to talk about this stuff. Our website is forwardlookingmanagement.com, and we've just implemented a section where people can ask questions and talk about it and get notified when the book's actually available, etc. So we'd love to have
you.
those conversations.
That will give us some exceptional feedback in terms of other challenges that people are seeing in the real world. It will only make our services and our capabilities and our information better for them. So it's something that we absolutely invite.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. We'll make sure to, if you're watching this, be sure to go there and provide some feedback. Thank you both so much.
Thank you,
Take
Brent.
care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at HR.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.